What's going on, y'all? It's Kenny Cams here. So we're about to check out a Candace Owens video where she is debating Ami Kozak. So we're gonna watch the video and check it out. I cut it at about 7 minutes, just because I didn't want the video to be too long, and I had a bunch of points already. So check out the video, and then we'll talk about it on the back end.
And he lies a bit, but I don't know. I guess he's at the age where I just sort of go, oh, well, it's just kind of like he's just like a crazy old man. But anyways, I did previously have Ami Kozak on, and I think that he was just a way more sensible voice on pro-Israel issues. And I know that because he saw these clips going viral and saw people pulling it out and pretending that Rabbi Barclay was the voice for pro-Israel, of course, he's going to take offense to that because who wouldn't when you feel like this person doesn't actually represent your beliefs? And so I wanted to give Ami a platform to kind of respond to that and to say and ask anything that he wanted to. So welcome back, Ami.
Right. Thank you, Candace. Well, he's not here to defend himself, so I'm just going to speak to a couple of the issues I thought weren't covered. And just, I think, as you believe, conversation and dialogue is the best. I maintain that that's the best way forward when these problems arise. And, the last conversation we had was called, Am I Anti-Semitic? And since then, you're definitely anti a few Semites, like just a few.
A few Semites?
Right?
Which ones?
I'm just kidding. But no, what I'll say is, in all seriousness, I think where I'm identifying the problem as you're coming up and clashing with the Jewish community broadly, let's say, is that there is a difference between what's going on internally with you and what you feel in your own heart and mind. And I am not comfortable telling anybody that they are something inside internally that they claim not to be. I don't think that's appropriate. I think someone knows who they are and what they feel. So when people label you an anti-Semite, you are this, naturally, your defenses go up because you know inside what you are, what you feel, that you have relationships with Jews, that you've had enriching relationships with Jews and Jewish people and have no hate in your heart when it comes to this. But the distinction I'm going to make is between what you feel internally and what goes on externally. And my concern as to what you've been doing, and I think for a lot of Jewish people, but I'll speak for myself here, is that externally, the rhetoric, the types of things you've been engaged in on Twitter, the types of language you're using, this kind of conspiratorial, suggestive nature of talking about issues, and we can get into the specifics of that, saying things like, what's really going on here? This is what they want. There's Jewish gangs going on, and taking the actions of particular Jews that you've had bad interactions with or nefarious Jews in history and extrapolating off of that and generalizing off of that is emboldening anti-Semitism broadly and adding to a climate that's very disconcerting for Jews and for me too, to see that. And in a world post-October 7th, when we've seen mobs of people on the street supporting it, and I know that's not you, and I know that's not Dave who had a discussion with, but there are people who do support it proudly, and to see rises in anti-Semitic incidences. Have there been mistakes in the past where we called that anti-Semitism where it wasn't there? Yes, but when we're seeing it now, for you to engage in this kind of rhetoric repeatedly in a pattern going on here, whatever's going on internally with you, saying you're not anti-Semitic and you don't have hostility towards Jews, I believe you. But to call out what's been going on externally and what you've been engaged in, to me, is not us trying, or me trying to cancel you or control you or doing any of those things. It's engaging with you and making you aware of such things. And in our last conversation, there was a point you made that I wanted to address. We didn't get to it, but the idea of like Jews are doing well, this perception that Jews are just doing well and we're comfortable. Now, if you took a snapshot in history right now, like I will not disagree that there's a lot of prominent Jews and we've made a lot of impact and made a lot of positive contributions and are represented in a lot of ways. We're proud of that. And the reasons for that are because of, are very clear, like because we, in terms of culture and what we value, there are things that you've advocated for during BLM and during Blexit, two-parent families and education and scholarship and commitment to those things. That's accomplished. That's been very positive for our community, and so I wonder why there's not more admiration for that as much as it seems like there's suspicion for that. And I'll just close by saying in this opening part that for us to engage with you on this issue and to call your attention to it is just to make you aware that even though Jews you perceive as doing well in this current moment, the history, it reveals to me a certain lack of awareness and ignorance to the history of repeated cyclical anti-Semitism that Jewish people and the Jewish community has faced for decades, 100 years, millennia, throughout history in every society we've ever been in. And to not be aware of that or sensitive to that, to make you aware that you are contributing to this climate, I think is important, and it's important to engage on that. And I curious to hear if that's something that concerns you.
Yeah, no, it doesn't concern me at all, really, because I think it's just overblown. I mean, I don't know why anybody would be offended to say that Jews are doing well in America. They are doing well in America. I don't say that as a way to slack off and say, oh, well, I guess we should point the finger and say that we should get everything. It's just a fact. Asians are also doing well. I mean,
Mhm.
I've said that
No,
plenty
but
of
what about the
times.
conspiratorial
Well,
language, like
I wouldn't
Jewish?
get to that. So that's the
Go.
first thing is like, I'm not going to apologize for saying something that's abundantly true. And it's not, it's literally abundantly true. You could go and look at statistics that Jewish Americans are living really well. So I'm not going to pretend that they're not. To the second point about you saying that I'm engaging in conspiracy, even something as simple as saying, when you say they, when did Jewish people suddenly get the right to the word they? Like, that's even like, when did now they always means Jewish people? That's like, to me, that is such a leftist. Now we're taking this word and it implies that every time you use this English word that you've been using since you could speak English, this automatically means that you're talking about Jewish people. And you need to be extra sensitive every time you type out this word because of October 7th. I just can't subject myself to that. So if there's a specific allegation regarding a conspiracy that you think that I've perpetuated, I would like to answer for it, but I would like a
Hmm.
a specific allegation and not just like
Sure.
you say they sometimes, because they is a word and I have a right to use it.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. I'm talking about in specifically when you're talking about a Jewish person that you feel that you've clashed with, and then jump from that to say what's really going on here, and not focusing on the actions and of individual people, but to say I'm just going to say it like there's Jewish gangs out there, or I'm just going to say it like this pattern of focusing on you know. Um, and no, not a lot of people know that in Nazi Germany, when they were burning books, the first book they burned was a Jewish pedophile. Was that not something you talked about on the show?
That
So
was.
I'm just saying, in an isolated context of if we're having an academic discussion about certain things in history, I can understand wanting to be able to cover everything. But I'll give you an example. Like, remember the incident you had with Ted Lieu, where he deliberately took you out of context to make you look guilty
Mhm.
of saying something you didn't say? And I thought that was despicable. Like, it was so obvious that what he was doing at the time. But I think sometimes what you're doing, perhaps inadvertently, is in resenting being taken out of context to make yourself look guilty, you take yourself out of context to make yourself look innocent
Yeah,
and
but
say,
I don't take myself out of context. I say an entire episode of what I want to say very
mhm,
plainly, and then I'm taking out of
yeah,
context because I think that after October 7th, a lot of people have grown hysterical and they're looking for
mhm,
every time you talk about a Jewish person. Case in point, obviously, rather notoriously, when Andrew Klavan, and you just referenced it, talking about Magnus Hirschfeld and his institute being burned to the ground. This Jewish pervert happens to be Jewish pervert out of context, meaning that you stripped that I mentioned 4 Christians in that exact same monologue. 4 Christians.
mhm,
That I was talking about psychology and the fact that it was created by a lot of perverts. And I talked about 4 Christians before I got to Magnus Hirschfeld. How do you just
mhm,
completely strip that out and pretend that this was a monologue about Jewish people? Actually, what's really happening is that you are defending Jewish people because every time you hear a Jewish name, you think that you somehow have a right to defend it. And to the second point, and I'll tell you what really bothers me about this, when you say you're talking about Jewish gangs have always existed in America. So I don't know why this is like suddenly something that we're going, you can't say that there could plausibly be a Jewish gang. Yeah. You know who else has always existed? Black gangs. I talked about it regularly all throughout BLM, talked about gangs. I talked about black gang violence the entire time today on my show. I was talking about Lil RT and how he's going to end up in prison. But for some reason, Jewish people think that they're just like in a special category where you're just not allowed to ever allege that they were in gangs, even though there's nonstop evidence in American history that Jewish gangs did exist. And they had a ton of power. When you can go back to Prohibition, you can go back to the Jewish gangs that, were quite literally the Jewish Defense League that were putting bombs under people's cars. So to say that you can't imply, and it wasn't even me who implied, by the way, I was actually going back historically and talking about what Michael Jackson was implying as I was reading Diddy
mhm.
Docs and saying that we keep hearing this allegation that's being made in Hollywood. To say that you don't have a right to even imply there's a Jewish gang is just a nonsense. If I have a right to imply there are black gangs and talk about black gangs, I certainly have a right to say that there are Jewish gangs and imply that there could be a
I'm not
Jewish gang.
I'm not saying you don't have a right or a legal right to say these things, but I'm just in terms of a pattern of things and an inference of things and assuming something, one of the things that you were astute at pointing out during BLM,
Yeah.
right, was that what was the fundamental flaw there? Okay. It's that they were assuming that because of an incident with a white police officer and somebody on a black individual and something took place or somebody was killed, that must mean that there is a systemic problem of white racism targeting black people in the United States, and you spoke out against that. And so the generalization, taking single incidences and assuming there's something bigger or grander going on, seems to me what you're doing with the Jewish community when you take certain instances that have happened historically or whatever and jumping to these conclusions in the way you're
But
engaging
I
with
didn't
it.
jump to a conclusion. That episode was me quite literally reading through the Diddy docs and the allegations that were made in the lawsuit. And then
Yeah.
a TikToker did an entire video talking about how these were the same allegations that were made by Michael Jackson. And he didn't do that to create a conspiracy. It was quite literally the person that was involved in the Diddy lawsuit was the person that was there when Michael Jackson died. So there was a direct tie. So again, you say I take myself out of context. You're taking me out of context. I wasn't like, here's an episode where I think that Jews are conspiring to control Hollywood. And again, like I said, if the feedback from these individuals during the time of BLM was, Candace, you can't talk about black people conspiring to commit crimes and gangs that are rising up because of BLM, because slavery existed and this isn't a racism, then I'd say, okay, fine, fair bait. But it feels exceptional to me that the same people who applauded me for this exact same rhetoric, and I'm going to give you an example here, David Horowitz of the Horowitz Freedom Center, he's a despicable human being. How dare you give me a literal award? An award and say you are so brave for tackling BLM and talking about all of the ills of Black Lives Matter and talking about how we're using this one issue and they're destroying communities and they're doing all of that. And then when I say, oh, wow, look at this issue going on post October 7th, you suddenly go, no, you're an anti-Semite of the week and you deserve to have your entire life destroyed. I don't accept Jewish supremacy. And that's what it sounds like to me when you have individuals who didn't care when I said the exact same thing, who still don't care, as I still cover Black American issues like Sexy Red and Cardi B and talk about how their fame is completely fake and that there's some system that allows this fame to float to the top. And yet you're so sensitive if it has to do with a Jewish person. Also, white people. The people that get the most coverage on my show are white people. I'm constantly pointing to what's happening in their TikTok trends and what they're doing, and they're not offended. So it actually, to me, is like snowflake culture that's gone writ large in the Jewish community, and they're just calling everything anti-Semitism like Black Americans called everything racism in 2020, and I'm consistent. I find it boring, and I'm not going to be like persuaded against talking about these topics because there's a Jewish sensitivity. So this is a great conversation.
All right, so y'all, I'm gonna cut it right there and let's talk about this quick. So the first point I want to make, and I hate that people have to say that I'm not anti-Semitic, and I'm gonna speak about that in this, that people like him, and not saying Jewish people, but I notice a lot of Jewish people do this, at least Jewish people in media. He's talking to her as if he is inherently from the moral high ground. And I think that has to do with this chosen people bullshit. Nobody's chosen. That's a book of your people. That doesn't trump all other stuff. First and foremost. But it's talking down to Candace. When Candace is extremely intelligent, even when he says stuff like, I don't think you inherently know you're doing it. So like she doesn't know what she's saying or what she's doing. And what this is a way to police someone's speech and to get, it's trying to persuade someone to produce the results that they want. I'm watching this while I'm recording this right now. You can even see it in the eyes. It's like the response is not to hear, it's to, you need to get in line, and why aren't you in line? So like, it's a couple points that I really want to make, and I'm gonna leave this one kind of wide open. I think this one might do a little bit better. Maybe not, because Candace Owens' videos don't do too well for me, but hopefully this one does, because it's like protecting little sister on this. He is asking for Candace not to assume the intentions of people, while he's also assuming her intentions. It's so many things that I learned, like, and this is gonna sound racist, but it is in the Jewish culture, just like slang is in the Black culture, just like, you know what I mean? They talk in rhetoricals, and like, it's arguing to win, not to understand. It's really the spirit of narcissism. And like I'll say it, like that whole, whatever they believe, is the spirit of narcissism. That's a spirit. And like they live in it because it's all manipulation and greed and it's self. So you can't, but the thing is, Jewish people talk about every single other demographic in the pejorative and like all of them together terms. You know how much on the media I hear about black dudes being shitty and black dads being shitty, but no one ever comes in. Excuse the fireworks, y'all. It's the 4th of July, 5th of July. No one ever comes in and says like, "Hey, that's not all black dudes." But whenever we speak about the Jewish culture, I say, "Well, you know, not all Jews. You just see specific Jews." Why the fuck do I gotta care about your fucking feelings? Like, just like you had your shit happen in your history, my people had shit happen in their history. White, everybody had shit happen in their history. Like, why the fuck should I care about yours more than I care about mine? Or why the fuck should I care about yours to the point where I curb what I say to make you feel better? Get the fuck out of here. I know Candace doesn't cuss and stuff because she's super religious, but I'm an anger translator for here. Get the fuck out of here. We don't have to do what y'all want us to do just because y'all think it's morally right because a book told y'all that. Like, I'm so beyond all of this shit. Like, that how do people don't see through this nonsense? Like, it's a control, y'all. Like, you can't control me because your people went through some shit. I don't give a fuck. Just like you don't give a fuck about the person next door to me that's struggling can't eat. The kids you hear outside right now, like you don't give a fuck about them. So why do I give a fuck about what happened to your family? I don't know y'all. Like, so I'm supposed to, and that's when I say it goes back to this chosen people thing. They're supremacists. People don't want to say this. If you're a Zionist Jew, you're a Jewish supremacist, and you think your people are better. If you have the nerve to say I'm a chosen one, and this goes for like the black spiritual community too. I'm a chosen person, or I'm gonna get the fuck over yourself. No, you're not. Who told you that? Like, that's what I'm saying, man. I'm done dealing with this shit. They can take my channels and shit, but I'm over it because you can't just talk to people like that. You can't. It's not appropriate, and you're not smarter than everybody. So it's what y'all think, man. Kenny Cams, I'm out. Peace. Like, comment, and subscribe, y'all. And Candace, don't worry about it, girl. I got you. I got you. I know you can't say certain stuff, and I know you can't even say that you watch, but I know you can't say certain stuff. But just know, I got you. I'm watching. Big bro I'm on the case for you. I got you. Peace out, y'all. It's Kenny Cams.